another episode of the Speak Real podcast, sharing one-on-one conversations. We believe that storytelling is the best way to empower youth and give them the platform to find their voices.
Presented by YouthSpeak, because youth speak.
Hello everyone, Lolita here with YouthSpeak, and today we'll be speaking with Lauren from Justice for Society. We'll be getting to know a little bit more about Lauren, who she is and what she does, as well as talking a little bit more about some of the struggles she faced and how those things affected her mental health. So without further ado, we'll get right into the conversation. Hello, Lauren, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Awesome, I'm doing good. So I think the first question, I'll get right into it. I'll ask you to tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Lauren and I'm 17. I'm in grade 12. I'm a musician, a feminist, and a writer for Justice for Society.
Awesome. Okay, so Justice for Society. So you're a writer for Justice for Society. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? What is Justice for Society?
Justice for Society is an online magazine. It is founded by youth and it is run by youth, and it's a really amazing organization. In each issue, we try to tackle different issues around the world in our society, and we do our best to, provide an unbiased and educational point of view and just educate people around us.
Amazing. No, that sounds really, really cool. And you said it's an online magazine.
Yep.
So is there a website that we can go to find that?
On the Justice for Society Instagram handle, there is a link in the bio for their website.
So we'll make sure everyone gets that information if they'd like to check out the online magazine. That's really cool. So I guess tell me a little bit more. Let's get deeper. Tell me about your childhood and tell me about your childhood and what it was like growing up for you.
I come from a pretty big family. I've got 4 sisters and a mom and a dad. My sisters are all older than me, and so I had a lot of really positive female influence in my life. They all did their part. They all played a huge role in raising me. And most of us are musicians, and so it's kind of something that runs in the family. And we're all very different people, but my sisters are independent and very strong.
Wow, now I can't imagine growing up in a household with all that amazing female energy. Must have been an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see now that you've channeled all that amazing energy into a lot of the work that you do today, right? So that's pretty cool.
For sure.
Lauren, what is the biggest challenge that you think that you faced up to now on your journey?
I think my biggest challenge has been my mental health. I have premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So that in combination with internalized misogyny has been, some of the biggest struggles that I've faced, coming to terms with myself and coming to terms with, feminism and its place in the world today.
Premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Wow, that's a big word. Can you explain a little bit more about that and how it shows up in your life and maybe how it affects you?
For sure. It's essentially a disordered form of PMS. Symptoms can range from depression and anxiety to joint pain and muscle pain, headaches, insomnia or hypersomnia, and even delusions and hallucinations.
Wow. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the journey of how did you come to find out that was something that you were dealing with or you're suffering from?
I had been kind of really confused about my symptoms for a long time. And about a year and a half ago, I was taking a psychology class in high school, and we were doing projects on various disorders, and it kind of like that name on the paper just kind of stood out to me. And I was doing my project on it. I realized that I felt like I was just writing about my life and myself. So I went to my doctor and told him, and he agreed with me that this was definitely what I was struggling with. And since then, it's still a struggle because there isn't like a definitive treatment, but it's helped me understand, why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, what's going on, and kind of given me some sort of parameters to help me cope with it.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. I can't imagine the I know what it feels like when it's that time of the month for me. So I can only imagine compounded with those severe symptoms. It must be really, really difficult and really have a huge impact on your mental health on a monthly basis too. So I can only imagine how difficult that is to deal with. And I'm glad to know that you were able to reach out early and speak to your doctor about it. But that's one thing. I feel like women go through all these different things, and maybe sometimes we just attribute it to it's just part of being a woman or just part of regular part of being life. But when the symptoms are so severe, I think that's the time when it's good to check in and go see your doctor, because you could be suffering from something like this. So yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I think that like in my experience, a lot of experiences had by women or like biological females are kind of just brushed off or not really cared about too much. And even myself, I've just often been like, well, it's just PMS, like you're being dramatic. And I know that that's not true, and it's much more serious than that. But I think we have to take women seriously, which is something that society seems to have a bit of trouble doing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, like I said before, I know how difficult it is for me during those times. And I think this is something that women need to speak up more about. I think it's such a taboo subject
Oh,
that,
for sure.
yeah, I think that we could talk a little bit more about it so that we can educate men and whoever else about it who may not understand. Sometimes when we are dealing with some of those symptoms, they can be sometimes confused and not know what to do. But it's a real thing. These things, they affect our mind, our body severely sometimes, especially with this type of disorder. So always good to
Mhm.
check in for sure. What led you to the type of work that you're doing now?
Um, in the past year, I've kind of really been able to kind of take a step back and, understand the world around me in a different way than I've ever understood it before. And I had kind of discovered a lot of internalized misogyny in my life. And I realized that, feminism, it has an important place in the world today. And, it's not just you get the right to vote and, property rights and, it's all fine. There's so much more complex than that. And so that, along with just kind of observing the world from a totally different um, perspective and a totally different place than I've ever viewed it before, I feel like, especially working with Justice for Society, that I'm, doing something about it. And I think educating and writing about it has not only helped me cope with it, but helped me feel more comfortable with it.
Right. Now you spoke about that earlier on in your journey, that you said the internalized misogyny, that was something that you dealt with that really affected your mental health. Can you talk a little bit more about what internalized misogyny looks like and how it affected you?
Yeah, for sure. It's basically, um, on the surface level, that women can do anything. That everybody's equal. That women aren't weaker, or all these stereotypes aren't true, but there's something really deep inside of you that still believes what society has um, kind of indoctrinated or pushed in your life. And for me personally, growing up with a household full of really strong, independent, capable women, they never taught me that women were anything less than men, and um, they never showed any misogyny in my life. And yet I still managed to develop a lot of misogynistic views just because of the society that, and it kind of gets embedded into your mind. And so for me in middle school, I remember I was definitely that kind of person who was like, oh, I'm not like other girls, or I hate the color pink, I won't wear a dress. And I thought that that made me special or better in some way to not be like a stereotypical girl and not be like other girls. But um in educating myself and in learning the last year and a half, I've really been working to combat those ideas.
Wow, no, I definitely can resonate with that, especially when you said about not liking pink. So I never heard of internalized misogyny until we had this conversation. So I guess I had a bit of internalized misogyny inside me as well, because I grew up with those same views, just being like, oh, I want to steer away from pink, or I don't want to do everything, the typical things that that women or ladies are supposed to do, little girls are supposed to do, all that stuff. So yeah, that's very eye-opening. Thank you for sharing that.
And I think a lot of people struggle with internalized misogyny, but um, it's not a term that's often used, and it's not an idea that's recognized as often as it should be. But I think most people suffer from it without even realizing it. Like, I went years, with internalized misogyny, not even realizing it.
Right. Well, that's amazing. And that's cool that those experiences that you had, and that looking deeper into yourself, realizing that's something that you dealt with, that led you to do the work that you do. And that's why you're so instrumental with Justice for Society. And I think that's amazing. Like you said, when you're writing with Justice for Society, you're writing about these different issues that that people need to know. You're educating, so you're doing your part. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
We're talking a lot about internalized misogyny. So I want to ask you, how has feminism changed your perspective?
That's a good question.
Loaded.
Yeah, I've kind of realized how feminism is necessary in today's world, which I really didn't realize how important it was, in 2021, in this time, until not too long ago. And so feminism has definitely helped me see the long-lasting impacts of structures that in our society, and the detrimental impacts of the patriarchal structure. And from that, I've been able to really open my eyes and educate myself on the impacts of racism and homophobia and these structures that are in our society. And they're not a thing of the past, they're a thing of the present. And I think it's important that we do all that we can to not make it a thing of the future.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I think that talking about how it just opened your perspective to not only see that, but all the different things that can kind of need some work, need some work in our world. So yeah, I think that's amazing. I can agree with that. Feminism has definitely changed my perspective too, and I've been able to, just like you, see all the different things that that could be worked on for sure. You talked about how you dealt with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, as well as internalized misogyny. So what are some things that you did to overcome those feelings and thoughts?
I remember, I think it was last May, I was looking at a vehicle technician position in the military, in the Canadian military, which is something that, I've considered for a long time, but I was just kind of, browsing career options, and I was looking at that, and, there was this like voice in the back of my head that was like, well, you're a woman, come on. Like, and again, at the surface level, I know that women can do anything. But there was that voice in my head that was like, well, you'll probably have to stop wearing dresses or makeup or whatever, because that's just, you can't let those two sides of you coincide. And I realized that day that was obviously not the right way to think, and that was a way of thinking that was pretty pervasive in my life. And I started actively seeking out media and movies, books, social media posts, and media that was feminist and positive and had accurate representation of women, because I've never seen a woman on TV or in a book that is masculine and feminine and isn't a villain, or is just herself without letting one thing make her a bad person, or, it's hard to find positive representation of realistic women. So I started actively seeking that out. And, authors like Angela Davis and her wonderful works have, really helped me combat that. I think education is probably the most powerful tool to help with that.
Now, that's an amazing thing you just said. Education is the most powerful tool. I feel like that is a great thing to say. Just with anything that you feel like you're going through and you're struggling with, I feel like educating yourself on the subject first, that's the first place to start. So that's a really great point. Great point.
For sure.
Also,
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. Also, to that, the fact that it's so easy for us to get stuck in those patterns of feeling like women can only do this and men only do that. But it's 2021, so it's about time to shake those things up. Women and men can do whatever they please. So yeah. Great points. So Lauren, my next question to you is, how do you think being a woman, specifically being a woman, affects your mental health?
Well, I have a bit of a unique position in that because I have, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is associated with femininity and womanhood. So I've had a lot of struggles taking myself seriously and taking my symptoms seriously. Even though years before I got my diagnosis, I took them very seriously. And then as soon as I started associating it with, my femininity or my womanhood, I all of a sudden started, belittling myself. And so for me, my feminism and my mental health are very intertwined because my feminism helps me cope with my mental health. And, they are very, very interconnected in my life. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, no, beautifully said. Okay, so what has been the greatest piece of advice you've received?
I think the greatest advice I got was about a couple weeks ago. I was talking to a teacher that I'm quite close with, and I just been having a really, really rough day. And I was venting to him and very emotional. And I found myself apologizing a lot and saying sorry, which I think is a common thing for both women and people suffering from mental illness. Just feeling like you need to apologize. And, he reminded me, he said, like, you're not a burden and you're, like people want to help you and it's okay to let people help you. And I think that that's something that's going to stick with me for a long time because, again, women and our place in the world has always, if we speak up, women's place in the world has always been one where if we speak up, we are a burden or, we're too opinionated or whatever it may be. And I think it's important to remind ourselves that, speaking up about our mental health and speaking up about our experiences and getting help from people, that's not burdensome.
Yeah, no, that is a very, very powerful piece of advice. And I totally agree and resonate with that for sure. So that was actually very beautifully said and a very powerful piece of advice. Yeah, and one that I think that everyone can definitely can take from and remind ourselves every day that we're not a burden. It's okay to cry. And it's funny that I always notice this pattern that every time someone goes to cry, they always feel like they need to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to stop because it's okay, like you said, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to share your feelings.
For sure.
So now, Lauren, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would probably tell myself to, stand up for yourself. I think looking back and recently I've realized that, a lot of people I've kind of either not realized or let them treat me in ways that weren't acceptable. And I think if I could go back in time, I would definitely advise myself to, stand up for myself. And I think that that's important for all people, and again, especially women and young girls, because we have the right to stand up for ourselves. And even though it can be hard and sometimes seen as, unacceptable, I think it's an incredibly important thing to do.
Yeah, no, beautifully said. Very beautifully said. So in your story, you shared about the work that you do with Justice for Society. So can you tell us a little bit more about your role there and some of the writings that you do?
Yeah, I'm a journalist, so I often write general articles or articles based on interviews that other members do. And I especially love doing general articles because I feel like educating people is such an important um, you know thing in society, and I feel very lucky to be able to do that with such an amazing organization as well. um, but I absolutely love writing for them because it makes me feel like I'm contributing something valuable. And I think it's every month we put out a wonderful piece of work, and there's also a podcast, and we have some amazing guests who have amazing takes on all these topics. We cover a really wide range of topics in each issue, and yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Amazing. Very cool. No, I'd love to check out Justice for Society. It sounds like a really cool thing, especially now with the way things are going. It's always good to have those kind of resources where you can learn more about the things that are going on today. So that's a great resource, I think. So thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
for sure.
Yeah. So Lauren, what does being a feminist mean to you?
That's a great question. To me, feminism, it means intersectionality. It means courage and equity. um all quite different things, but I think if your feminism isn't for everyone, then it really isn't for anyone. um and I think your feminism needs to include all expressions of femininity and all types of people. um you know I think that the goal of feminism is to dismantle the patriarchy, and it's not to put women above men, as many people like to say. um I think that's a really common misconception because people don't understand the need for feminism today. And I think it's important to know that the goal of it is to simply dismantle the system of the patriarchy that truly harms all people. Um, as far as equity, I think it's about um, we can't start from scratch, so we have to bring up the people who are suffering, and give them resources to be equal in society and have the same opportunities. And I think that equity is super important in the conversation of feminism. And I think that it takes courage to be a feminist, and it takes courage to educate yourself. um, that's not an easy step to take, and it can seem very you know gloomy. It can seem very hopeless when you start to educate yourself and feel like you're just kind of trapped in this never-ending story of misogyny and oppression of all these different kinds of people. um and it takes courage to you know believe in what you're doing and work at what you're doing and educate others and yourself. And I think that's really what the essence of feminism is.
No, that's amazing, beautifully said. And you said one very, very powerful statement there. You said, if your feminism isn't for everyone, it isn't for anyone.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful statement in itself. And I totally agree with everything you said. Feminism is courage, and it should, and equity also is very, very important in that conversation too. So everything, yeah, I totally agree with what you said. So yeah, very, very powerful statement, very powerful.
Thank you.
How has being involved in Justice for Society impacted your mental health or helped your mental health?
um I think once you start to kind of learn about and see all this negativity in the world, it can be very overwhelming, and it can seem very, like I said, hopeless. Um, and for me personally, Justice for Society has helped me feel less hopeless because, you know, as I'm writing, I'm learning, I'm reading other articles, and um, I'm really diving into these topics that I'm writing about. And so not only am I learning, but I feel like I'm helping at least one person to learn it as well, which I think, like I said, education is the most powerful tool. Um, and so it's kind of a double-sided coin. You know, there's the really overwhelming part of kind of coming to see the world as it is. Um, but then there's a really amazing and hopeful part, which is, you know, being part of something amazing, being part of an amazing team of youth, and being part of creating a really amazing resource for other people to educate themselves with.
Amazing. That's great. So that is really, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Lauren. Some really great words.
Thank you.
So how do you think Justice for Society can make an impact on youth? And why do you think youth should check out Justice for Society?
I think it's a really unique thing because it's written by youth, and it's a team completely made up of youth. Um, it's a really diverse group of people, and I think that it's important that youth connect with other youth. I think it's really great to see people your age and, you know, have conversations with people your age, um, as well as a wide variety of people. But I think that there's something really special about connecting with people your age. You know, there's some shared experiences. And again, I think that youth reading Justice for Society magazine or listening to our podcast can be a really wonderful thing because you're seeing people like you um, contribute something to something greater than themselves. And, you know, there's so many people that don't really have a lot of faith in youth, especially youth today. Um, and I think it's important that we look to each other for help and look to each other for inspiration and guidance, because if they're, you know, if people that are older than us, if, you know, grown-ups aren't gonna support us in the way that we need, I think we need to support each other, which is easier said than done. But I think that it's that Justice for Society is a great way for youth to learn from other youth, to connect with other youth, to talk with other youth. I think that that's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's amazing, especially the fact it's youth led. I think there's so much power in that, so much power. So thank you again for sharing that. Thank you again, Lauren, for joining us. It has been a really great conversation so far. I've actually learned a lot about PPMD. I've learned about internal misogyny and how those things have actually showed up in my life without me even realizing it. So
Mhm.
it's been great. And you shared so many great insights and a lot of powerful words. But we're going to wrap up. But before I go, I'd like to ask you one last question. And that question is, what is that one piece of advice, or what is that one thing, one message that you'd like to share with the youth?
I think it's important that each person take the step to um, analyze the world around them and educate themselves. Again, it's so important. And I think that um, analyzing your place in the world and, you know, what's going on around you and in your society and being present in your community, um, I think that that's so important. And it goes along with feminism and mental health. You know, if you're present in your community and if you're really present in analyzing it and understanding it, I think that that makes all the difference.
Amazing. Now, thank you so much, Lauren, for joining us. And thank you all for tuning in. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. I had a really great time.
If you want to hear more stories, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like. To support more youth by youth led projects, visit us at youthspeak.ca, where you can donate and spread youth mental health awareness. So thank you again, everyone.